Hello and welcome to this Subject Knowledge Development Introduction to Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. This video will offer you some starting tips to support you to teach this text in your own classrooms. We encourage you to use the pause points in the video, indicated by the symbol you can see at the top of the screen, to engage with your subject knowledge and consider the steps you want and need to take for your own development. My name is Emma Keatley, and I am an English Subject Development Lead. I'll be taking you through this text. The aim of these subject knowledge videos is to support you to think about your starting points and the directions you can take to be smart with your time in preparing to teach these texts and topics. By the end of the video, you should have a clear idea of what your gaps are and the next steps you might need to take to address these. I have placed a content warning here, as the Diary of Anne Frank obviously contains some upsetting themes, and it is good practice to provide a content warning before introducing sensitive content. This text contains World War II, anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, death and grief. It's important we start with prior knowledge. What current knowledge do you have of Anne Frank's diary? I suggest that you pause the video now and give yourself 1 minute to bullet point or jot down all you know about Anne Frank and her diary. Thank you for doing that. You might find that you drew on your own learning from school or degree. Perhaps you have read this text out of your own interest. Alternatively, you might have used your general knowledge, as Anne Frank is a well-documented historical figure. Differently, it might be that, beyond the title, you don't yet know much about this text. Any of these options is okay. The important thing here to recognise is where your knowledge gaps are as we compare them to the information we'll share in this video. Another really important thing to find out before you start developing your subject knowledge on this text is the school scheme of learning. Will you be expected to teach the whole text or extracts from it? If you are teaching extracts, do you choose the extracts that are taught, or are these provided by your school? Will you be looking at the original text or an abridged version? Will you be looking at this text in conjunction with other non-fiction or autobiographical or biographical texts? These school factors will impact how you approach your subject knowledge development for this text. For example, if you are teaching a scheme based on the whole text or a large number of different extracts, you will need to read the whole text. However, if you are teaching 1 or 2 extracts as part of a scheme that also includes other non-fiction extracts, you might not need to read the whole text. Instead, you will read the given extracts in detail, plus some carefully chosen diary entries from that period of the diary. So let's get started. Our starter cards give you a pyramid approach to getting a handle on topics and the text you're teaching. You will see a completed starter card for Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl, at the end of this video. The starter cards cover starting knowledge, thematic and contextual knowledge, research and pedagogy, and questions to consider. Let's start with the foundational starting knowledge of reading the diary. And we want to read the diary to understand what happens to Anne and her family, but then we also want to read as a pedagogue. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean read as an English teacher. Andrew Atherton talks about using easy markers to do this, and you can see some of these on the right-hand side of your screen now. For example, using an index page to track important moments in the diary, adding page numbers as you go, using a dot or another symbol in the margin as a good way of recognising the parts of the text that you might want to explore with pupils and develop your lessons around. And an asterisk for shock or moments of significance, with perhaps 1 or 2 words that help track the most pivotal moments of the text. After reading it, we might also want to try and engage with one of the film adaptations of the text. It's also important that you have an understanding of the different versions of Anne's diary. There are 3 versions, labelled A, B and C. Version A is Anne's original private diary that she wrote from the 12th of June 1942 to the 1st of August 1944. Version B is the diary that Anne edited after hearing a radio broadcast in 1944 in which a member of the exiled Dutch government announced that, After the war, he hoped to collect and publish eyewitness accounts of Dutch people during German occupation. Anne intended to send her version off after the war. Version C is a combination of versions A and B. It was edited by Anne's father, Otto Frank, after the war, when he was certain that his daughter was no longer alive. He chose to fulfill his daughter's wishes and published the diary. This version is the one readers across the world know as the Diary of Anne Frank, and it is likely this version that you will teach. You will also need to pay attention to the structure of the text. It is one of the most famous non-fiction historical eyewitness accounts of German occupation. It was written in first-person diary format, and the writer chose to name her diary Kitty and starts most entries with the salutation because, in Anne's words, I want the diary to be my friend. The final diary entry is the 1st of August 1944 because, on the 4th of August 1944, Anne's family's hiding place was discovered and she was taken to Auschwitz and then Bergen-Belsen, where she died as a result of the typhus epidemic in the winter of 1944 to 45. You will need to prepare to discuss this ending with your class. Pause here to consider and identify your next steps against the gaps that you noted down earlier in the video. Let's have a look at thematic and contextual knowledge. It is important to remember that we are English teachers and not history teachers. Pupils don't need to know everything about Nazi Germany's occupation of the Netherlands in order to read and explore Anne Frank's diary successfully. However, there are obviously some key contextual factors that you will need to understand in order to teach this text with the sensitivity and respect that it deserves. On the screen, you can see some of the core contexts and themes represented as icons from the Noun Project. Anne was born to a Jewish family in Frankfurt, Germany, in 1929. In 1933, Hitler and the Nazis came to power in Germany and almost immediately started to introduce anti-Semitic policies. As a result, Anne's family emigrated to the Netherlands. World War II broke out in 1939, and by 1940, Nazi Germany invaded and occupied the Netherlands. Again, anti-Semitic policies were introduced, and in the spring of 1942, Anne's sister, Margot, received a call-up to report for a so-called labour camp in Nazi Germany. As a result, when she is 13 years old, Anne's family go into hiding and remained hidden in cramped conditions until 1944, when they were discovered in a police raid and taken to concentration camps, where Anne died in the winter of 1944 to 45. While in hiding, Anne kept a diary, a present she had been given for her 13th birthday. As mentioned earlier in this video, the original version A was Anne's private diary, but she later edited it as she hoped to be able to publish her memories at the end of the war. The diary is a story of love, courage and resilience. It is about family relationships under the most difficult circumstances. It's also about adolescence. Anne was aged 13 to 15 when she wrote her diary, so it's also about her turning from a girl into a woman, and it documents some of the difficulties faced by Anne as she went through the normal stages of puberty, but in a confined and restricted circumstance. Pause here to identify areas of context and theme that you need to investigate further to support your subject knowledge. We've talked about starting knowledge and thematic and contextual knowledge for the Diary of Anne Frank, but where can you now go to develop this knowledge? Remember that the English pedagogy elements of this will develop as the year goes on, and I've listed some useful pedagogies on the right-hand side of this slide. On the left are some websites that you could use to support your understanding of the text and its context. Pause here to note down one or two starting points from the left-hand side for your own research. The final area to think about in this video is the questions for you to consider. We phrase these as how will I questions so that you can begin to build your own questions that will help you address misconceptions and help you plan carefully when teaching Anne Frank, the Diary of a Young Girl. These can be questions you write down as you are reading and researching, and you might find that you add to these and discuss them with your mentor over the course of teaching the diary. The important thing here is that they will help you develop your pedagogical reasoning and help you teach the diary of a young girl with intent. Let's share a few examples with you now. How will I introduce context about Nazi Germany, World War II, and the occupation of the Netherlands? How will I create a safe space to talk about anti-Semitism? How will I help pupils understand Anne's adolescent voice? How will I address the ending when Anne's diary stops because she is arrested and taken to a concentration camp? And how will I help pupils to understand the historical legacy of the diary? Pause here to add any other questions you can think of, and you can then add to this list as you develop your subject knowledge while you are teaching. What we have covered in this video supports the actions you can now take to develop your ongoing subject knowledge of Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. If this is a text you are teaching in Year 1, you may find that you add it to your year-long subject knowledge reflection document. This is an essential place throughout your training to show your ongoing development as an English teacher. This is a working document that you'll be adding to and sharing with your SDL throughout the year to support your QTS and beyond. You can find more information about your subject knowledge reflection document in your Brightspace content from Institute, along with the document itself for you to download and save. You can see here an overview of the table and some of the questions that we've covered today and where they align with this document. If appropriate, please pause here and use the questions to support you to complete or update your subject knowledge reflection document for your Anne Frank target. And don't forget to reshare this document with your SDL once you've updated it. You have 2 subject support roles you can talk to about your subject knowledge. So if you have a question about Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl, or about any of the topics you're teaching, please reach out to your SDL or your mentor. You will find everything we have discussed about developing subject knowledge for Anne Frank's diary on this subject knowledge starter card. Remember, it is our responsibility as teachers to know the topic and text we are teaching really well. Even if we are given centralised lesson plans, booklets or resources, this doesn't replace developing our own subject knowledge. Better subject knowledge means better pedagogical decisions in our classroom that will support learning for pupils. Thank you for engaging with this video, and I hope you enjoy researching and teaching Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. Here is a list of the references that have been referred to in this recording. Thank you.